Star Citizen continues to move well beyond the scope of just a space game. With a new, more punishing atmospheric flight model, violent weather, and base building on the horizon, Star Citizen is more planet-side than ever before. Yet, with these additions to the game, we're still left with a gigantic hole in dire need of filling if we're going to truly enjoy the game's vast, detailed environments. It's a hole that sits between the ultimate power of atmospheric spaceships and the disconnected helplessness of players on foot. Working ground vehicles are the next piece to the planetary puzzle to close the gap between players on the ground and players in the air, altogether creating a unique blend the likes of which no other game has achieved. The good news is Star Citizen's developers are already selling ground vehicles. The bad news is they really suck. You see, using ground vehicles in combat is a bit like rowing a boat upstream, and the boat is riddled with holes. You're blindfolded, the oars are made from sugar cubes, and there's an equivalent of an AC-130 with the agility of a hawk jammed up your ass. Hello, I'm Detox, and when I'm not making sweaty, vaguely humorous, narrative-driven Star Citizen gameplay videos, I like to play armchair games developer and deliver some much-needed commentary on issues I feel sorely needed. In this video, I'm going to show you why ground vehicles suck and how we should make them suck less for a better Star Citizen for all. Firstly, they're filled with strange design choices and inherent weaknesses with almost no strengths to make up for them, which is a byproduct of CIG's sacred mantra for ground vehicle design, rule of cool above all else.
So we opted for something a little less classical and went on a design that is absolutely more related to the manga and anime's world.
In almost every situation, you're simply better off bringing a ship. Combat-oriented ground vehicles are completely underrepresented in Star Citizen's gameplay loops, yet they continue to be sold at hefty prices. The Ursa rover was released in 2017, 6 years ago with 3.0. It arrived with the first introduction of planets in Star Citizen, yet there was no reason to use it. Its purpose is still yet to be defined, along with every other ground vehicle that has been introduced since, except the ROC. For the purpose of this video, I'll mostly be covering combat and transport-oriented ground vehicles, as these make up the majority. The best outcome for combat-oriented ground vehicles is a world where anti-air on the ground is a legitimate and formidable threat, where a combined arms problem requires a combined arms solution, where tanks and marines are deployed to hunt down anti-air platforms, creating problems for the airspace above, to clear the way for bombing runs and close air support to do their job. A dynamic Star Citizen where one small combined arms engagement could encompass 10 to hundreds of kilometers of Star Citizen's incredible planetary environments that are otherwise completely underutilized. While there is a huge list of problems these vehicles face, some of these problems can be reduced by a few corrections and adjustments to the vehicles themselves. The first hurdle to overcome with ground vehicles is to justify the resources required to deploy them. Currently, the best and most efficient way to move them is by using the Hercules Starlifter, a massive ship with a minimum of 2 crew requirement. So before you've even put a single player inside your tank, storm, or ballista, you've already committed valuable time, resources, and players to move them. Which means when a vehicle has run out of ammo, becomes damaged or destroyed, or CIG's incredible physics simulation decides to flip a 50-ton tank chassis on its back, you'll again need that logistical chain on standby to deliver replacements. That's already 2 players who could both simply be flying combat ships, which are currently better than ground vehicles by every measure. When you factor in the crew seats of vehicles like the Ballista and Nova Tank, 2 and 3 crew respectively, you've got to start asking some questions, like, why the f*** am I doing this?
Copy A2 incoming, Roscoe's direction.
One of the easiest ways to improve ground vehicles across the board is to simply make them tougher.
The seat, that A2 is flaring like no one's business.
Design problems aside, vehicles like the Nova Tank, Ballista, Spartan, and Centurion are fragile and need anywhere between a 25 to 50% increase in hull HP. The Spartan, in particular, a troop transport vehicle, gives up its weapons in order to carry a large number of troops, yet it comes with no additional defense or unique properties to justify its role as a troop transport vehicle.
It's so hard to hit. Yeah, Detox is stuck now.
A2 is heading towards Detox and Bar.
The Spartan should be almost double the effective HP of its counterparts while carrying its precious meaty payload. In addition, vehicles size 0 shields need larger health pools across the board. A size 0 pin shield standard across vehicles has a whopping 750 HP in comparison to an arrow's more than double 1725, for example. Why are military ground vehicles 900 years in the future so underpowered? With much less mobility or requirements for specialized components like quantum drives and quantum fuel capacity, ground vehicles should be built tougher. Careful guys, keep moving because we've got incoming missiles. Veggie one's overhead.
New ship from my direction.
Ground vehicles can't evade incoming fire, so they don't really need shield regen, but their shields need to absorb more damage so they have more time to do their job. Ground vehicles give up so much in comparison to ships, it should take more than light pressure for enemies to deal permanent damage. In addition, bar the storm, none of these vehicles currently have a soft death state, which is incredibly important for ground vehicles, where occupants should be able to escape and continue the fight. Yeah, as soon as you take any kind of damage, there goes the top turret, and there goes the my turret straight away. Vehicle component hit points and distortion resistance are also in need of adjustments across the board. New vehicles like the Storm shipped with single-digit hit points on their components, which has luckily now been corrected. But why did it even ship with these stats in the first place? The lack of situational awareness, feedback, and information inside vehicles is quite literally blinding. In a universe where snub fighters like the Fury MX can deploy an armored blast shield but maintain full visibility due to external cameras, the first-person pilot experience inside the Storm and Nova tank, for example, is needlessly claustrophobic. This forces pilots to use the remote turret view, and while this provides better vision, there is almost no information or feedback for the player to use. No crucial target information, no radar, no vehicle information, no damage interpretation, no shield strength, no component status. Just nothing. Even back inside the cockpit. Do you know what else is really stupid about ground vehicles? We don't have self-status. We don't have a self-status. It's so bad. Like, what the f***, man? I am begging CIG to spend some time consulting experts and designing some player-friendly functionality for these vehicles before roll of cool aesthetics to maximize sales. CIG, you would sell more ground vehicles if they could actually fulfill their role. Trying to use vehicles' clunky weaponry and uninformative UI is only rivaled in frustration by attempting to actually drive them. Driving ground vehicles is tedious, a testament to the absolute champions of the Daymar Rally who willingly put themselves through 8 to 10 hours of this torture for our entertainment. In recent months, CIG made improvements to ground vehicle movement, which was particularly noticeable in the Atlas platform and Ursa rover. These improvements helped them better traverse terrain and ascend inclines, while making them more resilient to impacts with rocks. The Storm, however, the newest addition to the ground vehicle lineup, feels like it received none of these improvements. This light tank, which nonsensically is wider than its big brother the Nova tank, has a tendency to pop wheelies with simple rock collisions, routinely getting stuck on trivial terrain due to its abysmal ground clearance, and it'll flip itself over and cry for mummy while you stare helplessly at your $80 50-ton screenshot machine. Improvements and better design choices, particularly for tracked vehicles, cannot come soon enough to provide tanks and heavy vehicles with better mobility, a more grounded and intuitive driving experience, while preventing damage and vehicle loss due to terrain that should be otherwise trivial for a military vehicle 900 years in the future. The one strength ground vehicles have is their stealth. Due to their overall lower signatures, it's difficult for air forces to detect them before entering the vehicle's weapon range, which was where we had previously been able to secure surprise attack kills and enjoy success while justifying their shortcomings. This was particularly powerful for the ballista, with its 50-meter minimum lock distance that's now been nerfed to 1,000 meters instead, as if the ballista wasn't already enough of a shell of its former glory. Oh! Ho, 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 ho! This was the best tool for taking out unsuspecting ships with 1 or 2 surprise hits at short range. Unfortunately, as of the 3.20 patch series, these stealthy characteristics are being changed for the worse, and most ground vehicles have had their detection ranges increased, reducing their stealthiness and making them more vulnerable to missile attacks from air with no way to retaliate. It looks like these changes may be reverted in patch 3.22, which is great, but it makes you wonder what their intentions were in the first place. If CIG boosts vehicle signature emissions too far, they become lockable at distances beyond the effective range of their surface-to-air guns and deadly intercept distance for platforms like the ballista's size 7 torpedoes, giving ships even more free reign of airspace regardless of nearby anti-air capabilities. Remember, just getting to where they need to be has already required a logistical headache, but when it's time to do their job, we're only reminded of how pointless the entire endeavor is. The list goes on, from non-standard vehicle dimensions and poorly designed ship ramps with improper gradients making transport difficult, janky unsettled vehicle physics grids when inside ships, a lack of vehicle-based rangefinders on weapons for cooling distances, a lack of 20th century smoke launchers to block line of sight, crew and power scaling that justifies the manpower, the inability to rearm the ballista's missile rack in the field, an over-reliance on useless missiles and server-dependent IFCS systems, which, I suppose, is a universal problem, but one that affects vehicles more. The state of ground vehicles is truly tragic. I really hope CIG can take a good hard look at what we have and endeavor to improve them. We could have fun and engaging ground vehicles if even some of these problems were addressed. Beyond that, CIG needs to reanalyze its approach to ground vehicles and stop creating rule of cool gimmicks that are nothing more than LTI tokens. Nothing demonstrates the vast, high-fidelity scale of Star Citizen like seeing it from the ground. Star Citizen is filled with thousands of kilometers of detailed, immersive planetary environments that players just have no reason to enjoy. There's a lot more CIG can do to address that elephant in the room, but if you ask me, improving ground vehicles is a great place to start. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to my community here on YouTube, my community on Twitch, and my Meaty member supporters over on my Fourth Wall site, where you can become a Meaty member too, while receiving some great perks or pick up some sweet detox merch. See you in the next one, people.